Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Craig Burrell, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is leading aircraftman Tyler Cooper. We warmly welcome the family of Lance Corporal John Grimes, whose story will be told shortly. We also warmly welcome the delegation representing the McCain Institute for International Leadership and the Australian National University National Security College. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland, who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. Australia's Federation Guard is the tri-service ceremonial unit of the Australian Defence Force. They provide a ceremonial presence at civil and military events and during visits to Australia by foreign dignitaries. The Guard will now dismount the catafalque party from the tomb of the unknown Australian soldier. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Please be seated if you can do so. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the hearts of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lance Corporal John Grimes. John Grimes was born on the 6th of November 1868 in Tasmania to Michael and Margaret Grimes. Both of his parents came to Australia as convicts, Michael from Ireland and Margaret from Scotland. Among the younger children of a large family, John and his family moved to Melbourne around 1878. As a young man, he moved to Western Australia, where he was joined by one of his sisters and her husband. In 1900, John Grimes enlisted for service in the Boer War, joining the 4th Mounted Infantry Contingent to be raised from Western Australia. At the time, he was living in Parkerville, on the outskirts of Perth, and he enlisted with two other young men from the district. The 4th Western Australian Mounted Infantry Contingent left Australia on the 8th of May 1900, arriving at Port Elizabeth on the 19th of June. They were involved in a number of battles with Boer guerrillas, notably at Leucop, Bethlehem, and on the Pittsburgh Track. For some, if not all of his time abroad, Grimes held the rank of corporal, and on his return had been promoted to sergeant. After a year's service abroad, the 4th Western Australian Mounted Infantry Contingent departed Cape Town on the 5th of July 1901, arriving back in Albany, where it disbanded a little over a month later. The following December, Grimes was honoured with his war medals in a public ceremony on the Perth Esplanade. After leaving the military, Grimes went to work as a stockman. His military career was far from over, however. In early January 1902, the Western Australian government began enlisting men for a federal or Commonwealth contingent. The morning enlistment opened, it was reported that a crowd of strapping fellows to the number of over 100 presented themselves and crowded around the doors in the hope of being enlisted. John Grimes was one of those men. He was granted precedence over others because of his previous service, was once again granted the rank of corporal and left Australia for the Cape on the 27th of February 1902. By the time Grimes arrived in South Africa in March, the war was beginning to wind down, and he returned to Australia in July 1902. He spent at least some years working as a labourer in the West Midland Junction area and was well known throughout the Hills district of Perth. John Grimes presented himself for a military service a third time shortly after war broke out in 1914. At the time, he was 45 years old, but put his age down to 39 in order to meet enlistment standards. Clearly a fit man, his deception worked and he was once again accepted for active service. Although his service in the Boer War had been on horseback, this time he went into the infantry, joining the 11th Battalion and sailing with the 1st Contingent. The 11th Battalion was one of the first ashore at Gallipoli in the early hours of the 25th of April 1915. After the rush to the heights under fire, most of the Australian battalions ashore became badly disorganised, and it took some time to reorganise the front line. During the confusion, Lance Corporal John Grimes was wounded in action. He was brought down to the beach and later loaded onto a hospital ship bound for Egypt. He died during the voyage. John's sister Mary was notified of his death by Chaplain Talbot, who told her that her brother had been buried at sea on the 29th of April 1915. Because of the confusion of the time, his death was later recorded as the 3rd of May 1915. He was buried at sea and is today commemorated on the Lone Pine Memorial on the heights above Anzac Cove. John Grimes was 46 years old. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, amongst almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lance Corporal John Grimes, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them.
Counterfoil party, present, arms. Counterfoil party, shoulder, arms.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget.
Counterfoil party, inwards, turn. Counterfoil party, quick, march.
We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, we thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.